In this video, we're going to be going over an introduction to interval notation, and this is our part 7 video inside of Math 20-1. So just as a quick summary of what interval notation actually is, if we look at this picture, it explains everything that we need to know. So first of all, inside of interval notation, there is a left endpoint, which is represented as this A here, and then there's a right endpoint, which is represented by the B. And these two numbers are separated with a comma, and then we close them off with either using a parentheses or a square bracket. And we're going to explain more about this in the upcoming slides and inside of this video. So let's get started. So first of all, what is interval notation? So interval notation is a way of writing subsets of a number line. So whenever we have a number line, we can use interval notation to write it as a subset. And the first way that we can do it is with closed intervals. So closed interval is one that includes endpoints, and we use square brackets inside of this case. So if we have a number line here, we can see here that it's on the left side, it starts with -5, and we can see that it's a closed interval because this circle is closed up and filled. And on the right side here, it ends at 1, and this is also closed. So since this is a closed interval, we use square brackets. So in this case, it would look like this. We'd use square bracket, and then we put -5, and then comma, and then 1. And this denotes the set of real numbers between -5 and 1 inclusively, and can be shown on a number line as well. So this basically says that we're including numbers -5 and 1 and all the real numbers in between. So that is what interval notation basically is. And moving on, we can also use open intervals. So an open interval is one that excludes its endpoints, and in this case we use parentheses instead. So for an example, we can see here these are what open intervals is. These circles are open, they're not closed. So in this case we can see that it is still -5 and 1, but in this case we're not going to use the square brackets, we're going to use parentheses because this is open. So it's going to look like this instead. It's going to have parentheses, -5, comma, 1, and then parentheses. So in this case, what this says is that it includes all real numbers, that is not including -5 and 1. So all the numbers in between these and not including them. So in a closed interval, it was including -5 and 1, but in this case, in the open, it is not including them. So moving on, now we can also have mixed intervals. So mixed intervals contain both open and also closed intervals. So if we have an example, we can see here that this one has a closed interval which is at 3, so we're going to have to use the square bracket in this case. And then in this case we can see that it goes all the way until 8, and this is an open interval. So this one is going to have a parentheses instead. So it's going to look like this. We're going to have the square bracket 3 and then comma 8. So this basically says that it includes all real numbers, that includes 3, but does not include 8. So all the numbers between 3 and all the way that's not including 8. And then now we can also have something called an infinite interval. So infinite intervals are intervals that tend towards infinity in either one or also both directions. So for example, here we can see that we're including 4 and then it goes infinity. So it's 4 and above. So in this case, when we work with either positive or negative infinity, we always use parentheses. So in this case, we have 4, and since it's a closed interval, we're going to use the square bracket, so it'd be square bracket 4, and then to infinity. And also, since this is infinity, we have to use the parentheses. And now moving on, there's also something called union of sets. So the union of two sets, A and B, is the set of elements in A, in B, or also in both. So basically what we use the union for is to combine multiple different sets. And the symbol that we use to indicate union of two sets is U. So for example, here in this number line, we can see that this is x can be less than -5. And in the other case, it can be x is greater than or equal to 3. So instead of union, what we can do is we can say, so the parentheses first, negative infinity, comma -5, and we're not including -5 because this is an open, and since this is infinity, we're gonna have parentheses. So this would be one interval, and then we're gonna use union, and then we're gonna have including 3, so we use the square bracket, and then also infinity, which is parentheses. So in order to connect two sets, we can just use this U for union. And that summarizes everything for the initial part of learning about interval notation. And in our next video, we're going to be going over some practice questions so that we can further enhance our understanding about this topic.